agriculture and other projects do involve some level of climate resiliency building. So by setting that up, then we could then access these monies, and that money is from the Italians. It has to do with climate resilience. And so you could get the cheap money and blend it. But they only give you a certain amount, they don't give you everything. Fourth, on the domestic debt, and this is important. What is important, that this little known, the cost of financial management has been enhanced through roughly two years. When we got into government, the UDP had an overdraft facility at the central bank of paying 8% per annum. And that overdraft was at $100 million. $100 million overdraft they left, paying 8%. And you know what we did, Madam Speaker? By 2022, we paid off that $100 million overdraft. We paid it off. We don't use it of the overdraft. And then, now this one will be a little bit more technical, but what we call the yield curve management of Treasury bills and Treasury notes through the development of what we call another proxy yield curve has proved effective to bring down the domestic finance to roughly 2.5%. Now the UDP back then never once sat down with the central bank and said, hold on, your interest rate I think was around 6%, but the cost of interest has gone down significantly. They never once had, I don't know, the know-how or the sense to sit down with them and say, hold on, make we renegotiate these interest rates. And that's what we did. You went to them and told them, hold on, interest rates gone down. During around COVID, we got down to about 1% at one time. And so we have then renegotiated so now that the average interest rate we pay, should I write this down, is 2.5%. When under the UDP, it was about 8%. And also, Madam Speaker, the fifth point I want to make, that we continue to incur debt, yes, but gauging growth by debt with the growth of GDP, and it has proven successful to reduce the debt to GDP. And we continue to keep this debt under 3% of GDP. And lastly, which is something they forget, we don't know malapagas, we pay with loans. So a major concern, and again, this is when you talk, it's important. No, I have no interest in what to talk about. But what is important is for you to hear what I have to say. It's important for you to hear what I'm saying. We have, Madam Speaker, imminent in the horizon, we have the principal payments for the blue bond that starts to 2031, 2032. So it's important that we start to accumulate sufficient primary surpluses to purchase foreign exchange reserves that will be used to make up, to pay off, they start to pay the blue bond. We've also started discussing with Central Bank on the establishment of a sinking fund for such principal payment, but at the same time, a robust mechanism must be established for revenues to be set aside for the purchase of the required foreign exchange. One idea that we're talking about is that the dividends on Central Bank itself, well, that will not be enough to pay. But we're looking of wanting to see if we could then set monies from the same borrowing from Central Bank that is at lower interest rates to be able to use to pay the blue bonds. And I hope I'm not talking about the terms, but if we could even prepay because we will pay at a cheaper rate, we want to do it. That is what is called debt management. Something, no, I'm saying if. No, I am saying if we can. So we will work on that. But also, Madam Speaker, you see sometimes in this honorable house, certain members, they're just lazy. They don't do their homework. They come here and then just talk for talk, not realizing that they have access to the information. In this case, the honorable leader come and say, you dey borrow every time, and you dey borrow, and you dey borrow. But what? The truth is that she's not totally truthful to the Belizean people. And I want to make 2 points on that point, Madam Speaker. You only say part of the truth, you don't say all of the truth.
Madam Speaker.
What is your point of order?
Of clarification.
No, I would not yield to a clarification. I will not yield to a clarification, Madam Speaker.
It would be your point of elucidation, which can only be allowed if the member on his feet will allow that. And I'm hearing that the member, Prime Minister, will not allow.
I hope you are not calling me a liar in this house, because you are a bold-faced liar.
No. Honourable Member for Albert, Leader of Opposition, the Prime Minister, and it was clear, did not call you a liar. However, you just did call the Prime Minister. It cannot be countenanced. I kindly ask members, I totally understand the emotions and the passion here, but please direct your language not at persons. I have gone through this before, and I'm asking for the kind respect on the rules of the House.
To repeat what I said, Madam Speaker, the leader did not speak out all of the truth. Because yes, it is the truth that you come to say that we're borrowing money. Everybody knows that. That's why I bring it to the House. But you know, finish say the part of the whole truth. And there are 2 points to that. The first one, that when we make a loan, we don't spend the money all in one day or 1 month or in 1 year. These loans, we use them sometimes as much as 4 years. In this case, we hope that we can use them within 2 years, because we want that road to be built, to rebuild as quickly as we possibly can. So like as we come and borrow this money, we don't spend it. It will be spent over 2 years. Other loans go as much as 4 years. But also just as important, the third part of the truth, because there are 3 truths to what you're saying. You only talk to 1 truth. I don't know if deliberately or maybe you know better, you never talk about the 2 other 2 truths. But the third part to that truth, Madam Speaker, is that every year we continue to pay with debt. If she would have only looked at the budget book, she could find out either A, you don't have the interest to look on it, or B, know about it but don't want to tell the Belizean people the truth. The truth is that in this fiscal year, Madam Speaker, we are going to pay off $126,035,078 of debt. That's what they pay. As we borrow, we pay. And when we borrow, we don't spend everything one lick, man. You need to speak the entire truth, not just a part of the truth. And try to confuse Belizean people, the Belizean people. So, Halover Bridge. We come and think about in 2 occasions to pay, we vote for the Halover Bridge. I think about $60 million. And how much did we spend, Minister of Infrastructure and Development? The Halover Bridge? When we built it, about, I think, between 25 and 30 million. But yet, the UDP don't come and make we approve 60 million, you know. Thank God they never build a bridge, because somebody else will be very, very, very happy. Several generations will be happy if they were building it for 60 million. And we can continue going through, Madam Speaker. The important point is that we are unapologetic when you come here and borrow in the interest of the Belizean people. If they could only leave their politics aside for a moment and start to think about what is in the best interest of this country. Yes, we want to do more education. We've never said that. But this government has been doing more than anybody else in education. We are feeding about 15,000 students in education. We feed them. Something that you all never did think about. Every child in the south side of Belize City have free access to education, to free education. Because we pay everything for them. So come and tell me, oh, we did do this, we could do. Of course we can. We admit that. But we have to look at the entire picture. That section of the road, and member from Mesopotamia, you travel it often because you have business in Belmopan. You know that a tricky area, you have to really know that road. Because if you don't know what to do, you could easily lose control and to be able to get, God forbid, or get into an accident. And we have to upgrade the highway system. It is a part of the economy, from agriculture to tourism to services and to the safety of the Belizean people. And maybe I need to repeat this because then a lot of you all did not have the interest to make a note that when we do this, it will also help with the flooding in Belize City. Because all of that water, the way it is, because of the amount of water, it backs up and it goes into Belize City and flood out the very same poor people you're talking about, remember from Mesopotamia, the south side brothers and sisters. We don't have the house high enough. So, by putting bigger culverts and fixing the Burden Canal Bridge, then we'll be able to alleviate some of the flooding. We're not saying we're not stop the flooding, but at least it won't be as bad as it is, and if it continue to rain in bigger showers as it's predicted under climate change, then it would be even more imperative that we do these things. Right. I wish you could sometimes just leave your politics on one side and say, for once, and say, let us do something in the interest of the Belizean people. We understand that we have all these needs. We understand that people go through a difficult time. That is why we've announced the GST 2 weekends before Christmas for the Belizean people. Who don't ever think about that? No. Never did. They never had the sense, they never had the vision to think about these things. So we are understanding and we're doing the best we possibly can. Madam Speaker, as I finish this, wrap up this debate, I am still hoping and praying and reaching out to the opposition to join us and to support us in a loan that is critical to the development of this country and to make life better for our citizens. I thank you.
Honourable members, that motion is referred to the Finance and Economic Development Committee for examination, consideration and report. I recognize the Honourable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 49.1, I move that the motion be taken through all its stages.
Honourable members, the question is that this motion be taken through all its stages this day. All those in favour kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Introduction of bills.
I recognize the Honourable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Investment and Economic Transformation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have two revenue supplementary appropriations to present, and I'm asking for your indulgence to allow us to deal with two of them as one, as opposed to go through one by one.
The question on the table, members, is that we allow the two bills, which would be the General Revenue Supplementary Appropriation bills, to be dealt with as one in terms of the debate. All those in favour kindly say aye.
Aye.
Those against kindly say no. Proceed, Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, this is the General Revenue Supplementary Appropriation 2024-2025, number 2 bill of 2025. I rise to introduce and move the second reading of a bill for an act to appropriate further sums of money for the use of the public service of Belize for the financial year ending on the 31st day of March 2025. And also the General Appropriation Supplementary Appropriation 2025-2026 bill of 2025. I rise to introduce and move the second reading of a bill for an act to appropriate further sums of money for the use of the public service of Belize for the financial year ending on the 31st day, March 2025. Madam Speaker, both bills have the recommendation of the Cabinet. I'll try to give a little bit of explanation, Madam Speaker, and I'll try to keep it to be a bit concise since also my other colleagues will also stand up in certain areas to give more of an explanation. It is important to point out that in the 2024-2025, where the government augmented its approval spending during the fiscal year, and where for purposes of transparency and responsibility seeks the subsequent consideration and approval of this honorable House. And please, I ask permission to refer to my notes. I will also take a broad macro approach since, particularly, as I said, members on this side, especially in Cabinet, may wish to provide further details on certain allocations. There are three distinct categories of spending. You have the recurrent, you have Capital 2, and you have Capital 3. As members will recognize, these classifications describe the nature of spending, whether undertaken in the normal course or whether capital investments financed locally or capital investments financed by external sources. For the fiscal year 2024-2025, the total supplementary submission is $78,752,546, of which approximately $20.5 million is for recurrent, $49.25 million Capital 2, and $9 million Capital 3. For this supplementary, therefore, 75% or 3/4 of the total allocation is for Capital 2 and Capital 3 investments. Now let me outline some of the larger allocations within this supplementary. The Ministry of Finance accounts for some $10.5 million, which includes approximately $4.5 million for various mandatory international contributions. The UDP was not for years when they were in government, never did pay the subscription that they had to pay for these different international bodies that we belong to, such as the Institute of Meteorology and University of the West Indies. $1 million for printing services across government, various grant allocations, including about $250,000 from UNDP, $435,000 for a new X-ray machine at the Carl Houston Memorial Hospital. Immigration accounts for $1.1 million for the purchase of additional passports. It's important to point out that this $1.1 million is recovered with the sale of these passports booklets when Belizeans apply for their passports. The Ministry of Home Affairs accounted for some $3.7 million, largely related to the cost of our recruitment squad number 98. This new squad had about 225 new recruits to bolster the ranks of the police department at a time when citizen security persists as a major focus of the government. The Ministry of Rural Transformation, Community Development, Labor and Local Government accounted for $2.2 million, almost entirely accounting for the transfer of the head tax on Belize City Council for the period July 2022 to September 2024. What is happening is that this head tax goes into a sinking fund, and it's only when the time to pay the sinking fund, then the City Council asked us to give them the monies that we've collected under that. So, and that came up to $2.2 million. Lastly, the Ministry of the Blue Economy and Disaster Risk Management accounted for $1.5 million. And that spending was mostly entirely to augment the budget of the National Fire Service. In regards to the Capital 2 allocation, I wish to highlight the following investments. $10 million was invested one second, Madam Speaker. I got too much papers here with me, Madam Speaker. I have it on my phone. $10 million was to the Office of the Prime Minister and allocated to the Constituency Development Fund, the CDF, and that benefit all 31 constituencies. Even the UDP get money from that, all of them. $9 million attributed to the Ministry of Infrastructure Development and Housing, which funded the new road from the village of Bully Tree to Spanish Lookout. What's important about this road, Madam Speaker, is that whenever there's any flooding in Belize, in the Cairo area, the tongue and also, we have Spanish Lookout and them, they get cut off. But now we're almost like you have like a ring now, because now this will connect to Bully Tree and to San Ignacio and could still be able to take out their produce and their products.
They use it for trade.
I'm sorry?
Trade.
Yeah, of course. It's important for trade. We have a lot of trade, a lot of agriculture in that area and cattle. $1.3 million was attributed to the Ministry of Finance for vehicles and the vehicle tracking system. Under this government, Madam Speaker, know that we're putting tracking systems, and now even that we'll be able to shut down vehicles over the weekend that cannot be used only if you have permission. We're already starting to see a decrease in the amount of fuel that is being used. Then we also, the Ministry of Finance used $1.1 million for awards, settlements, and compensation, and $1.6 million for the Financial Intelligence Unit. Now, I really want to take time, Madam Speaker, for what was done with this $1.6 million for the Financial Intelligence Unit, and to give credit and to allow the Belizean people to understand what we have achieved. I need to acknowledge what this money was all about, and also to express my appreciation and our government, and I think by all Belizeans, the appreciation for the team of the FIU under the leadership of the former director, which is Ms. Lenny Magan, for what they have accomplished for Belize in this support. For over a decade, Belize was a financial pariah in the international financial system. The name of Belize is synonymous with de-risking in the international community. This under the UDP that we lost about 85% of all of our correspondent banking relationships that we had. The correspondent banking crisis of Belize faced was a direct result of Belize being grey-listed by the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, the CFATF, in 2011. Who was in government then? I didn't see one over the other side. This financial isolation had a direct adverse impact on Belizean businesses, families, and individuals. And we see individuals because even people in states may have problems for send money to Belize. So through the unyielding efforts of the FIU and the broader team of public service officers or public officers who came together with a singular purpose to change the narrative and build a new image of Belize, Belize achieved the distinction of having the strongest technical compliance rated in the world. Belize is no longer grey-listed or blacklisted. Belize now whitelisted, is now a whitelisted, a status achieved by less than 15% of the countries in the world. These historic achievements mark a dramatic turnaround. It is a triumph for which we extend our gratitude to all those who brought through their sacrifice, because they used to work some long hours, and even the National Assembly, because remember, I want to bring all of these bills for us to support, and I will give credit to the opposition. They used to support it on those ones that now believes that now, because of all of that work, we are making banking in Belize easier. And all of us are benefiting in our daily lives, in the conduct as on business and personal affairs, in the financial system, and in this economy. I must pause to thank Senator Chris Coye, who spent countless hours and meetings in Belize and abroad, along with the Financial Secretary Joe Wade and Lenny Magan, along with her team at the FIU. Remember, the UDP may had somebody else there, and he was unable to do that work. That is why we needed new leadership. And because of the work that they have done, now Belize is no longer blacklisted nor grey listed. One of among 15% of the countries around the world that have been able to get this grade. So it's important to point out that we're not just spend for spend, Madam Speaker. We have $3.2 million as, for the Ministry of the Public Service. Again, that's for the funding. Remember, Madam Leader of the Opposition, March of 2025, I know that called general elections. Remember that? We only spent $3.2 million for the public service, and I must thank the honorable member from Fort George who continues to lead that ministry. We have $2 million linked to the Ministry of Public Service, Utilities, Logistics, and E-Governance for the initial funding of a national ID program. $5 million attributed for the rural transformation for various streets and public roads improvements in several of our municipalities, and for a reverse osmosis water system in the village of Sarteneja. $2.7 million for the Ministry of Health, which includes $1.2 million for the construction of a pediatric ward in the Northern Regional Hospital, and $600,000 towards new ambulances. $2.6 million for the Ministry of Education relating to the National Healthy Start Feeding Program, benefiting some 15,000 primary school students, as well as contributions to the Wi-Fi program for schools. And one final mention is the $800,000 spent on surveys and mapping for the Ministry of Natural Resources as we continue to work assiduously under the leadership of the DPM to get lands in the hands of the Belizean people. On Capital 2 allocations, from the Office of the Prime Minister, you have $2.7 million. This is again to fund project pipelines and the social investment funds, usually water and schools and now security. $4.4 million from infrastructure development and housing, which includes spending for the Caracol Road, recording various disbursements from OFID and CDB, as well as $600,000 for road safety. Lastly, $1 million on the Ministry of Sustainable Development relating to the 24 sanitary landfill. The sanitary landfill, they already get filled up, and so they have to dig more areas where you could store the garbage. So the House is being asked to consider and approve this supplementary appropriation on the basis that for fiscal year 2024-2025, the total recurrent revenues and grants surpass the approved budget by approximately $125 million, or by more than 8% of the forecasted amount. Now, I underscore that the total supplementary authorization sought is $78.7 million, which is the equivalent of just 1% of 2025 GDP, and less than 5% of the total expenditures of the year 2024-2025. Both of these measures illustrate the Cabinet and the Ministry of Finance were measured and prudent in managing the supplementary process. And I need to make, on an election year, remember when the UDP in 2015, when we do, they just spend. And they still never come back to the house and tell me how much they spend, you know. Just in Belize City, they may give away over about $44 million. Just in Belize City. They may give fridge and the TVs. On TV, people they need TV and then they get on TV. They get mattress, then get sand, then get all kind of things. Just give away the money. We did not go down that road, Madam Speaker, because we know that our work speaks for itself. And that's why I want to once again thank the Belizean people for us to be able to win another 26 seats, and by even a bigger margin than what we got in 2020. So on this basis, I ask that this Honourable House support this bill and take it through all its stages at today's sitting. Now, Madam Speaker, going on now to the second appropriation, for the year 2025-2026. The total authorization sought by this bill is $131,649,601. Of which the recurrent portion is around 30.4 million, Capital 2 is 74 million, and Capital 3 is $27.2 million. The recurrent represents 23% of the total supplementary submission, while Capital 2 and 3 represent 77%. Again, the recurrent allocation is almost entirely the value of the wage increase. Remember, we give a wage increase for public officers, teachers, and security personnel, as we agreed earlier this year with the negotiations between Belize and the joint unions. And I'm sure you support that, right? Madam Leader of the Opposition? This is the first instance of the 4.5% of the current salaries, as it's estimated for just under $15 million for the period from 1st of October 2025 to 31st March 2024. When the entire wage and pension increase is implemented, the full 8.5%, the annual value of this increase will be $60 million per year. I wish to underscore that this is the largest increase in wages and pensions ever awarded by any government of Belize. This wage increase recognizes the hard work and dedication of public officers, teachers, and security personnel, including the police department, the BDF, and the Belize Coast Guard. And I emphasize, as we on this side of the House have done during regular budget presentations, that the largest single allocation of public funds within the national budget is directed to the wages and pensions of almost 16,000 public employees. As the country's largest employer, this government has set the example with this wage increase, an example that recognizes the value of work and that considers the rising cost of living largely because of the price of imported goods, which are beyond our control. And let us always remember, especially those on the other side, why it is that this government can afford this level of increase. Because we have managed the public finances responsibly, slashing the public debt, collecting taxes from those who should pay, and controlling spending. The other notable recurrent allocations, Madam Speaker, is $3 million to support the pension benefits of the employees at the Carl Hushan Memorial Park, Hospital. Remember, they were clamoring and saying that they were not getting all of the pension they should have gotten when they left the government service. Whilst I believe that we could have fought it legally, we felt that it's best to have a good working relations with the unions. And we did the right thing. We sat down and we negotiated and we've agreed to give another $3 million to support the pension benefits of the employees. We also had another $1 million for an additional grant to the University of Belize. $800,000 for the rejuvenated Ministry of Sports, and $1.4 million to support the Colby Foundation. Now, the Colby Foundation, remember, is they manage the prison. And again, because of the increasing cost of goods, of the food for the prisoners, they came back to government and negotiated an increase. So today, we're spending $25 per prisoner per day. So when you multiply it per year, you could see how much you had. That's why I remember DPA was always saying it's cheaper to keep a child in school than to keep them in prison. That is why we continue to invest in the Ministry of Education to ensure that our kids stay in school. Now for Capital 3 allocations, $6.1 million to the Ministry of Infrastructure Development and Housing for the upgrading of the road between the towns of San Ignacio and Benquevio del Carmen. I'm sure the honorable member from Cayo West would be here, he would be happy to get up and say that, yes, that is an important road. But he did say he's not feeling well. He sent me a message, and I hope he gets better soon. But yes, we spent for the road. Also, $2.5 million allocation for the installation of the Santa Familia Bridge, and $1.2 million for the upgrade of the road from Orange Walk Town to the village of Guinea Grass. Also, MIDH, there's another $2.7 million for the complement grant funds from the ROCT for the upgrading of the National Assembly building down the Republic of China, Taiwan. Remember, they made a grant, but it's not enough. And we feel that we must also have a little bit of pride and say, we have put the difference. And so we have $2.5 million towards that to finish. And as you said, Madam Speaker, that hopefully by the end of January, we will have the first sitting in the refurbished and renewed National Assembly. And also there's a $2.7 million for the repair and building of streets in the Vista del Mar area of Ladyville. $6 million under the Ministry of Finance, and this is related to the cost, to the closing down of the recently purchase of the government, by the government, of the dams previously owned by Fortis, and the 33.3% of shares on BEL. This provision covers the legal, accounting, financial, technical, and other costs relating to this historic acquisition. Also pertaining to the Ministry of Finance is $3.7 million for the acquisition of vehicles. Now let me mention something when it comes to the issue of vehicles, Madam Speaker. We have done a number of things when it comes to that. First of all, most of these vehicles are replacing vehicles. After 4 or 5 years in the service, these vehicles, we need to replace them. It costs more to keep them running than to, in effect, buy another one. Secondly, we are not buying luxury vehicles. In many instances, some ministries, the public service ministries, they would send us wanting to buy luxury vehicles, and we have rejected that. And so most people, they buy SUVs and pickups in a range between $50,000 and $60,000. Secondly, what we have been doing now, we have put in trackers on these vehicles so that we could monitor the use of this vehicle. So whenever a public officer would go to, say, okay, they have to go to a meeting or they have to go somewhere, we will know exactly where they're going. And then the ministry responsible for that vehicle then can know exactly where you have been. Because many times, some of our officers, they say they're going to a meeting, and they go to a meeting for only half an hour, and then after that, you don't see them for the rest of the day. Or the weekends, they're using it as their personal vehicle. Now, I understand that sometimes they want to use that vehicle, but at the end of the day, it's costing us a lot of money. So these truckers now, we are already seeing that the use of the vehicles are being minimized, and immediately also we're starting to see the amount of fuel that's being used. It's going down. The Ministry of Finance also, we made a contribution to our sister nation, Jamaica. Our heart goes out to Jamaica of $400,000. I hope whatever amount we can afford, as I told Prime Minister Holness, no, I mean, we small and poor, but we can do whatever we can to be able to help. And I know a lot of citizens, and for instance, I think the business people from Spanish Lookout and other areas, they managed to send, they sent a container of food for them. And so I want to applaud all of these efforts by all Belizeans. As a government, we've sent $400,000 for them. And also, we also set aside another $400,000 for our friends in Cuba who also got battered by the hurricane. There's a provision of $250,000 to support the financial intelligence unit, and also to the students. Yeah, we sent food for the students both in Cuba and in Jamaica. All of them got food. And I know some people want to try to play politics of it. I mean, they want to try to say, oh, now we did something. The other side probably not do nothing. Relating to the Office of the Prime Minister, there is a $3 million allocation for special security operations of the National Security Directorate, deployed to complement the regular program of the Home Affairs Ministry, along with $3.8 million for the National ID program. For the Ministry of Health, there's another amount of $1.2 million. That word change, a bad word. We don't use that word. There's another $1.2 million for the pediatric ward, to finishing up the ward in the Northern Regional Hospital, and $350,000 for the provision for UNICEF works. For Foreign Affairs, there's another $2.2 million. This for immigration, $2.2 million for the purchase of passports, booklets, and permit supplies. Again, there is one case, Madam Speaker, as soon as we get the passports, people come and get their passports. Now I think more and more people are traveling, and also because it has the little chip that has your biometrics. Now people we can make it so much easier for all of us to be able to travel worldwide. The Ministry of Education, then the then Minister from Honorable Member from Toledo West came to Cabinet and said, we are overwhelmed by the need for more scholarships, and there's a shortage of $5 million. So $5 million we gain for more scholarships, and even the opposition get help with these scholarships. Unlike what they used to do to we used to give nothing with scholarships. They used to take all we give to the opposition too, Madam Speaker. Under the Ministry of Economic Transformation, there's a $2.5 million that's allocated for the campaign to eliminate the fusarium fungus in the sugar industry, for 40,000 acres of cane fields. I just asked the Honorable Member from Toledo East, and he was telling me that that we're starting to see the early results, that we're starting to see some improvements. We're still going to be damaged by this fungus, but at least we've kind of controlled the spread, and then try to help some of these cane stocks to be able to grow. On the Ministry of National Defense and Border Security, we provided $5.5 million for the recruitment and training and equipment of 300 new soldiers to join the ranks of the BDF, because when they're retiring, we have not been replacing. So we have to be able to keep up with to replenish our soldiers in the BDF. Also, we made provisions for $1 million to fund 50 additional Coast Guard officers. So we're getting from the BDF, the Coast Guard, and the police. The Ministry of Local Government, there's $2 million for the upgrading of streets in Belize City, $6 million for the same purpose to upgrading of streets in the other municipalities, and $1.2 million for the dredging of the mouth of the Belize River. Again, we have to work with the flooding. Over time, it's been years. I think it's the PUP government was the last one that we dredged that mouth of the river. And with years, the siltation then does not allow the water to run freely. And it affects not only Belize City, but also the Belize River Valley area, because the water can't flow as quickly as it should. In Capital 3 allocations, there are only a few highlights, Madam Speaker. $5.7 million for the Belize National Trust Fund, provided under the Office of the Prime Minister. $1.8 million, and this is for I think for mostly schools and that they build, and water supplies and so forth, water systems. $1.8 million for the Social Investment Fund, $8 million for the Climate Resilience and Sustainable Agriculture Project, CRESAP, and $3.1 million to help fund the Rural Water and Sanitation Project, co-funded by the Inter-American Development Bank. As I did with the previous bill, it is vital to view this supplementary allocation with the wider scope of the economy and the relevant budget framework. The value of the supplementary budget is less than 2% of this year's projected GDP. The value is just 7.4% of the total recurrent revenue and grants of the fiscal year. We need to take into consideration, and I know that a member from Mesopotamia can greatly appreciate, that a budget is just a guess estimate. You figure based on cost, this is what you look at, all your costs, expenses for salaries, things that recurrent, and whatever other projects you may do, and you project that this is what you will spend. But in a huge organization like the government of Belize, many times the projections or the costs tend to be more than what was expected. And that is why we have to come from time to time to make these adjustments. But what is important is that unlike the previous government, we bring it to the House and we ask for the approval of this honorable House for us to be able to spend the money and let the entire country know. We're not trying to hide it, like what the UDP did with $1.5 billion that they never reported to the National Assembly. So it is important also, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I want to point out also that we have a portion on the expenditure side, but we also have on the revenue side. And on the revenue side, the revenues we're collecting is more than what is projected. So whilst it's not totally balanced off, it will help to be able to pay off some of this extra cost that we are incurring. So, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Finance, we're confident that if most, if not all of these supplementary provisions will be covered by the incremental revenue collections. And we have not raised taxes, so I just want to make that very clear. So on this basis, I urge all members, both sides, to support this bill and ask that it be taken through all its stages as today's sittings. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Leader of Opposition, Member for Albert.
Madam Speaker, with your permission to refer to my notes. 1 second. Sorry? Oh, yeah.
The proposal. Yeah. You can.
It seems, Madam Speaker, that, we talk a lot about, or this administration speaks a lot about transparency and accountability and what they are doing that the former administration didn't do. But, Madam Speaker, these two supplemental appropriation bills account for an additional $210 million. Madam Speaker, you will recall when the Prime Minister stood up in this honorable House and talked about grandstanding, spoke so eloquently about the fact that our economy had grown by 8.2%, Madam Speaker, when the truth is that we had only seen a 3.5% growth. And if the economy is as robust as the Prime Minister continues to pontificate, why is it that we keep coming back to this House over and over and over and over and over for additional sums of money to balance the budget. The truth is, Madam Speaker, there has been severe under-budgeting by this administration. When the budget is presented, and it was presented 6 months after the election, so there was ample time to get it right. In fact, at that time, the Prime Minister said the reason there was such a delay in the presentation of the budget is because ministries had been realigned, realigned, and he needed to get it right before coming to the Belizean people. Madam Speaker, taxpayers, working families, and communities continue to shoulder the burden of an administration that governs with no regard for transparency, no regard for accountability, and no regard for the economic hardships of our people. Why is it, Madam Speaker, that as the expenditure side of this budget is presented, these allocations are presented, supplementary appropriations are presented, why is it that we don't hear on the revenue side where let's present the complete picture? We are to trust that we're collecting more revenues. It's coming in, trickling in. We're not raising taxes, which is an half-truth, because the way fees have increased in this country. The fact, Madam Speaker, that inflation, why is it we haven't reduced the cost of fuel at the pumps? Why haven't we? Because honestly, that's the only revenue the government can boast about. Even when crude oil prices have gone down significantly to the lowest it has ever been, the Belizean people still have to bear the high costs of fuel at the pumps. And the Prime Minister comes to this honorable house and says that we will look out for the people. My government is looking out for the people. If you're looking out for the people, Mr. Prime Minister, and you should listen, you shouldn't be on your phone. You shouldn't be on your phone. You should know that as the head of state who benefits from the high cost of fuel at the pumps, personally benefits from the high cost of fuel at the pump. You should know what the international cost on crude oil is. So we have returned to the House, Madam Speaker, for $210 million. I want that to sink in, because the truth is, what the Belizean people care about is the things that affect their daily lives. The high cost of living that continues to spiral out of control, Madam Speaker. The fact that not only important, because you can reduce the cost of fuel. You can. The economy, they grow. It's robust. Man, you've misrepresented that by over 5% growth. That is a gross mistake on truth that you presented to this House. Madam Speaker, as I said in my earlier presentation, 210 million, 69 million is not pocket change. This is not incidental spending. This is not, Madam Speaker, a technical adjustment, as the Prime Minister wants us to believe. This, Madam Speaker, is a massive overrun, a giant fiscal wake-up, and a glaring indictment on a government that has lost control of its spending. A government that has lost control of its priorities. And a government, and I want you to pay attention to me, member for Orange Walk Central, that has lost control and lost the confidence of the Belizean people. It is a matter of fact. Madam Speaker, I represent the Albert constituency. It is a Southside constituency, Madam Speaker, where the social infrastructure is quite different than on the northern side of the city. You don't have to take my word for it, Madam Speaker. You go on any social media platform, the number of families that continue to go on social media begging for support for health care, basic health care. But we, in the budget, promoted the fact that we're investing $50 million in NHI, and it's not serving the people because people do not have access to adequate health care. Over and over and over, we receive the reports, particularly in the north, member for Orange Walk Central, where when you go to the hospitals and the clinics, if you don't take your own medicine and supplies, you're not able to get treated. And that's a matter of public record. I ask, Madam Speaker, that the government, in presenting figures to close the gap on its overspending or under budgeting, that they also come not only with the expenditure side, but tell us how we're going to pay for it. You see, at the time of the reading of the budget, Madam Speaker, the debt to GDP ratio looked good, no? Because the truth is, it is presented to ensure that we have a quote-unquote balanced budget, knowing full well that the budget presented to the Belizean people is not suffice and cannot at all meet the needs of a growing economy, of a people who are desperate for public services, of young people needing and looking for jobs despite the fact that the Prime Minister will stand up in this honorable house and suggest that, man, we almost don't have no unemployment if you listen to him. That does not reflect what is happening on the ground in the communities that we represent, and particularly not in the communities in the south side of Belize City. Madam Speaker, the members on this side of the House will not support the bill in its current form. Tell us, Madam Speaker, what new allocations will be given to support our safety net initiatives for families who keep falling in the margins, those who are most vulnerable in our communities. Tell us, Madam Speaker, if this is the only supplemental we can expect from the government for the remainder of this financial year. And if the trend of this administration, Madam Speaker, proves anything, this supplemental, or these two supplementals, are just the first of many. We deserve better, Madam Speaker, and we should demand better. We will continue to advocate for the needs of the most vulnerable in our society, those who need access to higher education, those who need access to basic services in health, those who need access to housing, those who need access to land, those who need access to jobs, those who feel the pain every day of making difficult decisions, whether they're going to pay a utility bill or put food on the table. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member for Mesopotamia.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker. I'd like to refer to my notes, please. Madam Speaker, Supplementary Appropriation Number 2 for the fiscal year 2024-2025. A document that quite frankly should have come to this Honorable House months ago. Not long after the fiscal year has closed and the money has already been spent. Madam Speaker, this supplementary is very late. It's not just a procedural delays. It is a symptom of deeper financial mismanagement. A breach of proper public governance and blatant disregard for the parliamentary oversight that houses is constitutionally mandated. This House is constitutionally mandated to perform. The fiscal year 2024-2025 ended in March 31st, 2025. A supplementary appropriation should have been brought during the year when the spending occurs or immediately after the foreseen expenditures arise. But today we are being asked to retroactively approve spending from the fiscal period that is already history. This is after the fact budgeting by backdating, Mr. Speaker. This government, this administration spent millions of dollars without parliamentary approval. I'll give a good couple of examples, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the under budgeting. For example, we're here, Ministry of Home Affairs. I just opened up the book, Ministry of Home Affairs, and it says here the estimated budget was $9 million, but yet the revised estimate is $10 million. And the following year, they still put it back at $9 million. And it goes constantly with every department. It's the constant under budgeting. And that's why we're here today to pass this supplementary allocation 2024-2025. Instead of coming to the House before spending or as soon as they recognize the shortfall, they spend the money, sign the contracts, made the payments, and now only they're trying to clean it up with late supplementary allocations 2024-2025. And yes, Mr. Speaker, previous administrations had delays in bringing supplementary. And I must say that if they could do it, we could do it. They could do it 10 years ago, we could do it today again too. Mr. Speaker, I bet you the government will respond that when the UDP were in government, they did the same, or even claim worse. The government of today failed to realize that they are the one who campaign on good governance, and their plan believes 1.0 and 2.0. Blaming the previous administrations to justify their authority to do the same is just irresponsible. Mr. Speaker, it is especially concerning that this supplementary is being rushed before the Auditor General's finalizes the audit 2024-2025 fiscal year. The government wants to regularize the overspending so that when the audit comes, the book looks clean. It is an attempt to sanitize unauthorized expenditures. Mr. Speaker, I go now to 2025-2026. Mr. Speaker, I clearly remember, because it was my first budget debate during the summer, when the budget was read and we debated the budget. I stood right here in this very seat, the very position, and warned that many government ministries were underreporting and suppressing their true budget needs just to make the budget appear balanced. And even with all the massaging of numbers, even with all the cosmetic trimmings and the underreporting, the government still came up $40 million short. That alone should have been a red flag. But now, Mr. Speaker, we're here today, November 25th, 2025. 6 months ago, after the budget was passed, and the very same government is back here in this honorable house asking for an additional $131 million. This confirms exactly what I said and what I warned: constant under-budgeting. Government ministries deliberately under-budget their needs, under-report their projections, and understate their operations, not because the numbers were real, but because they wanted the national budget to look good in the budget book. This supplementary proves that today. The budget was never realistic. Mr. Speaker, a budget is supposed to be honest, transparent, and accurate, and reflective of the real national needs. And yes, sometimes you have things that pop up and, things happen. But no, $131 million happened. What this government did was to prepare a budget based on suppressed figures and not our reality. Ministries were told to cut the numbers, lower the requests, reduce the line items, keep it in line with the budget, and still $40 million short. And now another $131 million today. A national budget that was artificially constrained, and now halfway through the year, ministries are short of money and in financial crisis. If you force the ministries to underreport their needs just to make the deficit look smaller, then, of course, 6 months later, they will come back to try patch up the holes. 131 million holes. Mr. Speaker, supplementaries are normal. And I said it over, and Prime Minister said, yes, it's normal. But this size, this timing, and this pattern is not normal. A supplementary of $131 million is not normal. The budget was knowingly unrealistic. Ministries could not operate on the given allocations because it was underreported. Revenue projections were likely inflated. Expenditure controls were weak or ignored. Ministry of Finance had no real handle on the forecasting. This is not unexpected expenditures. This is not emergency spending. This is not contingency adjustments. This is a government fixing a budget that they knew from day one was not grounded in reality. Under budgeting. Ministries are now scrambling to cover their basic needs. Mr. Speaker, the bare fact that ministries are now back here asking for more money shows their original allocations were simply not enough. The Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of National Security, Health and Infrastructure, Housing, Education, Immigration, just to name a few, all struggling with operational costs because they were forced to understate their needs just to help the government claim that the budget had improved and balanced $40 million deficit. Mr. Speaker, the government likes to talk about fiscal responsibility, but look where we are today. Numbers rearranged to look better in a press release, not to reflect the true cost of government governing. A credible government would present real figures, not suppress figures. Manage expenditures within what was approved, or at least keep it close. Come back only when truly necessary to this House. And the plan is based on evidence, not their presentation. But instead, the government is now halfway through the year, scrambling to fill another $131 million gap by its own decision to understate its true expense. The Belizean people deserve honesty in budgeting. The Belizean people expect straight talk. They expect the national budget to be based on truth, not politicking. When a government presents a budget that is knowingly understated, it is misleading the public. When they come 6 months later with a massive supplementary, it is an admission that the original budget was a work of fiction and a mirage. Mr. Speaker, this is not transparency. This is not good fiscal governance. This is moving numbers around just to make the picture look good. Mr. Speaker, the supplementary appropriation is simply not correct. It confirms that ministries were underfunded and underreporting. It confirmed that the budget was misleading. It confirmed that the government was more interested in the optics than the budget than the realities of governing. Today, the $131 million request tells Belizeans one thing loud and clear. The budget passed this summer was never enough to run the country. And now, we must pay for it. I could bet you, Mr. Speaker, before the end of 2026 March, we will have much more supplementaries coming because of the under-budgeting. I'll just go ahead and state a few numbers right here based on the numbers that were given to us. And yes, the Prime Minister made mention of detailed some of the figures and said that how the monies were spent. But some of it were just blanket figures. Just one number thrown out there and no explanations. If we would have gotten these numbers and more details prior, then we would not be here asking questions and see how all the monies were spent. And not all departments or not all supplementary allocations were mentioned or detailed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Mesopotamia. Your mic.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon to colleagues. I'd like to start off by thanking the member from Mesopotamia for his presentation this afternoon on this particular supplementary appropriation. I think a lot of what he said we have to take into account, and we have to look at the ways we can improve the way we budget in this country. But, Mr. Speaker, for the opposition to come into this House and say that they are not going to support this budget, we have to tell the Belizean people what exactly they are not supporting. Because they are not supporting investments in people. One of the major parts of this particular supplementary, Mr. Speaker, is a salary adjustment that was negotiated with the Public Service Union, with the BNTU, that is benefiting all public officers. On October 1st, it came into effect, the first 4.5%. That was not a foreseen expense. It's something that came after the discussions with the unions, with the joint union team. So I am here to say, yes, I do support the spending on our public officers. I do support that they should have gotten that 4.5% salary adjustment. The opposition says no. The opposition said they will not support that budget. They will not support that allocation. They are saying that they will not support the 4.5% salary increase. But, Mr. Speaker, in addition to that, also what was negotiated in the last round of the collective bargaining agreement was an increase in transfer grants. That also is a benefit to public officers when they move from one location to the other. According to the collective bargaining agreement that was signed by the Prime Minister last year, those transfer grants were increased. That is included in the supplementary, Mr. Speaker. And I think the opposition has to explain to the Belizean people why it is that they would vote against such an allocation. Mr. Speaker, I could go into a number of initiatives. The improvements of the pediatric wing at the Northern Regional Hospital is the opposition saying that that should not be done. We can look at some of the other items, the recruitment in the BDF, the new recruitment in the Belize Coast Guard. These are also included in the supplementary budget. The upgrading of several roads, the projects that are continuing under MIDH, the opposition is saying that they don't want to support that. Mr. Speaker, it is funny when I hear the opposition comes in here and laments about this not happening and we're not investing enough in people. When we're seeing the investment in people, Mr. Speaker, we're seeing the investment in our public officers, we're seeing investment in our social programs. So they talk out of one side of their mouth saying we're not doing enough, but when we do get up and say we want to support these types of initiatives, they vote against these same initiatives, Mr. Speaker. So let them explain that, and they can pontificate all they want. And yes, as I said, we have to be able to do a more comprehensive budget exercise every single year, and I know that all ministries, all departments are engaged in that. And we have to look at what are priorities in all of our ministries, priorities in all of the departments, and be able to advocate for those priorities, and within the reality of the budget constraints, of course, but we have to be able to advocate for those, and we have to be able to carry out the projects that the people demand and that the people deserve. So, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to raise those very few points because I think it's important that the Belizean people understand that this is not a time for the opposition to be talking about politics. This is a time for us to invest in people. And through this supplementary, through this allocation of resources in people, we are seeing that investment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my contribution on both supplementaries that are before us. And I too want to join in certainly advancing the points that were made by the honorable member from Fort George. Because when you listen to that crowd on the other side, in fact, it's no longer a crowd. It's only the leader of the opposition and one member that speaks to the kind of confidence that they have in their leader. So the Belizean people are certainly making note of that. But, Mr. Speaker, the point I want to make is that the leader of the opposition speaks about investment in social programs. And I just want to reiterate some of the points that I think it is very important, that I want to speak to certain areas. I want to speak to health. The kind of investment that this government has made in national health insurance across this country. And as the Prime Minister has repeatedly said, the National Health Insurance Program has been rolled out across this country. This government, the People's United Party, has the record that the National Health Insurance Program started under the administration of the Right Honorable Said Musa in the Toledo district, where we saw the highest level of poverty. And the government undertook that because it is one way of giving back to the people, one way of ensuring that the poor people have access to good health care services. That is why we started it. And that is why under this administration, we have rolled out to essentially all the country. Cayo, soon to come on board. So, speaking about social programs, when poor people can go to the hospital and see a doctor, they can get attended to and get the kind of services that they need, whether it is an ultrasound or any other service for that matter, and that they can get their medication, that is caring for the poor people. I listened to the leader of the opposition, and, you know, it surprises me, but it doesn't, it doesn't really, I don't really expect anything better from them when she said that poor people going to the hospital and actually carrying their medications. That doesn't make any sense. That is not logical. Why would you go to a doctor if you're carrying your medications? So under this government, we have seen significant investment in health services. Mr. Speaker, I want to also speak to the whole issue of education. And I want to thank the member from Freetown, under whose leadership we saw the EOP program implemented across this country, helping young students, and we continued that. Whilst I was there for a brief stint at the Ministry of Education, we saw the expansion of where students' tuition in schools across the country are paid fully by the Ministry of Education and the government of Belize. This ensured that every single child had greater access to a quality education, whether you can pay for it or not. That is investing in social programs. We have seen a significant increase in the rollout of the Health Start school feeding program. Health Start school feeding program, where today we have over 15,000 students directly benefiting. Mr. Speaker, the member from Fort George also spoke to the issue of education, and Prime Minister did indicate that just recently Cabinet approved $5 million to continue to invest in tertiary level education for our students. Not only for UB, Galen, and our junior colleges across this country, but including universities that are outside of Belize. That is the kind of investment that this government is doing in education. And I will say to you, we try to be fair, because whenever these applications come to us, many of the applications would come through the area reps, but equally so, in fact, I believe we had even more applications coming in directly through the district education centers across this country. And every single application that came in, whether it is secondary school, whether it is tertiary level or university, we have honored it, Mr. Speaker. That is our commitment to education, to advancing the education of our people. So what better investment when you invest in education, when you train your human resource, when you give your young people an opportunity to be able to get a good education and to contribute significantly to the development of our nation. So I don't know what they're talking about. And I also want to speak to a similar issue that the member from Fort George also spoke about, the investment in granting the increments and the allowances to our teachers and public servants. And let's not forget that under this administration, Proposal 22 was approved, and that saw significant investment in our teachers. You know, under Proposal 22, essentially what happened, as you know and as the nation may know, prior to Proposal 22 being approved, government-aided schools and those that were privately managed, the teachers did not receive their full benefits. So essentially the arrangement was that if a teacher taught at a community school, for example at Toledo Community College, when they retired, they would only be getting 70% of their benefits. The other 30% was dependent upon whether the board would be able to pay them. And that is something that the unions and the teachers were advancing and advocating and asking that government take up full responsibility, because there should be no difference between a teacher who teaches at a government school and at a community school. They both teach, they teach the same thing, so they should be paid equal benefits. 13 years at UDP, 13 years under Patrick Faber and the leader of the opposition. Did they ever approve those benefits to the teachers? No. Who did it? The People's United Party. This government ensured that we successfully negotiated, and today all our teachers in these schools are beneficiaries of their full 100% benefits. That is a government that cares for its people. So when I listen to the leader, I think she's really running out of ideas. This government is serious about investing in our people. We have seen, Mr. Speaker, investments across the rural areas of this country. Today, Jalacte, San Vicente, San Benito Poite, they have their mini-grid system under construction, and very soon they are going to get electricity. We saw Corazon getting electricity, and pretty soon in Toledo East, we are going to see Otosha, Dolores, and other communities that will benefit. That is investing in social programs. Water systems. Man, right now we completed the water system in Mabilha. Mafredai, about to be completed. New water systems are coming in Otosha, in Boom Creek, and across this country. Aren't those social programs? Aren't those investments to better the lives of our people? Come on. San Isidro just completed, and I can go on, Mr. Speaker. I wish the leader of the opposition and her lone member who's remained here with her would be here to listen to what investments this government has made across this country. We have seen significant investments in land acquisition. Every week, every other week, we hear the Deputy Prime Minister and his ministry having land clinics in which people come and they are able to process and get a piece of land. That is investment in people. So, what are they talking about? It's, you know, you are either hot or you're cold. Because on the one side they say, well, you know, we are not against investments, but you know, it's the manner in how you do it. Man, listen. We were elected to govern. We have a responsibility to ensure that we deliver to the people of this country. And yes, delivering on our platform, delivering to social programs and other needs of this country requires that from time to time we borrow. But we do not borrow recklessly. Do I have to remind them about Petro-Carib money? The amount of money that they had under Petro-Carib, what did they do? They had Tacos Fest. They had swimming competition. That's what they had, not investing in the people. So, Mr. Speaker, there is a stark difference. There is a clear difference between this government and that side of the House. We are committed to a continued work and development for Belize across this country. And no Chicken Little, no sky is falling is going to deter us from continuing our investment and building in our human capacity and resource. For the Belizean people know that this